Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would talk about the very interesting fight between that of Tyson the Gypsy King Fury and that of Francis the Predator Ngannou. Of course, for those of you that did not know that this fight was occurring this weekend, Tyson Fury was going to have a professional boxing match with that of the Cameroon former heavyweight champion of the world of the UFC, Mr. Francis Ngannou. And of course, I think that in my video that I said I give Francis Ngannou about a 5 to 10% chance of winning this fight. Turns out Ngannou, at the very least, had about a 30% chance of winning this fight, if not even a little bit higher, because he gave Tyson Fury probably the toughest fight within probably the past 5 years. Even Tyson Fury, I believe, said that, overall, after the fight, that Francis Ngannou really gave him the toughest fight, and even hit him with some of the harder punches that he had been hit by within that of the past 10 years. So I have to give Francis Ngannou a lot of credit here. Now, just to start off the video, let me address this because Tyson Fury did end up winning the fight. And there is, I can assure you, going to be a lot of people claiming that this fight was a robbery and that, oh, we know what's going on. They gave it to the boxer because of money, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of the times, certain decisions can be fixed, especially if the fight is close. But at the end of the day, do I believe that Tyson Fury won the fight? I did have Tyson Fury winning the fight, but I had it by an extraordinarily slim margin. I think I had it 95 to 94 in favor of that of Tyson Fury. So the scorecards, I think that they were right there. I think that Tyson Fury, the last judge scored it 95 to 94 for Tyson Fury. One of the judges had it 96 to 93 for Francis Ngannou, which, certain people complained about, but in my view, it's not out of the realm of possibility because that would just mean that you gave Tyson Fury 7 rounds instead of 6 rounds. So I had Tyson Fury winning 6 rounds. But of course, because of the knockdown that ended up happening in round three, which kind of surprised people. Of course, the fight was a little bit closer. And of course, one of the judges, they ended up scoring it, I believe, 95 to 94 for Francis Ngannou, which is a little bit interesting. I guess he must have scored it probably 5 rounds to five, I'm guessing, because then Ngannou would have been ahead by one, I believe. I'm not really sure. But anyways, when it comes down to it, this was a very particularly interesting fight. It's also going to be very interesting to see, and for those of you that know my channel, I like to review that of the LDBC and new media channels or certain channels that I find to be biased. They're going to have a field day with this one because, they probably did not pay attention to this fight much because they thought Fury more than likely was going to dominate Francis Ngannou. But now that Francis Ngannou was actually almost able to beat that of Tyson Fury, and yes, he actually did almost beat that of Tyson Fury. Because a lot of people, when they take a look at certain fights, they say, oh, well, he almost beat this guy, but really the fight was not that particularly close. This fight was extraordinarily close. And like I said, I had Francis Ngannou winning 4 rounds with the knockdown that he had in round three. I gave Ngannou 94 points, and I gave Tyson Fury 95. But of course, for stepping into the ring with one of the greater boxers of this generation, and in my view, probably one of the greater heavyweight champions and one of the greatest heavyweight champions in that of boxing history, he did an extremely good job. Now, do I think that do I think that he was a little bit rusty because he had not fought, I believe, ever since that of December of last year. So he pretty much had not fought in about 10 to 11 months when it came down to it. And that's also going to be very interesting. Let's see if any of the LDBC and new media channels, let's see if they mention any of that. Because we all know when it comes to Jamel Charlo and when it comes to other fighters that they always love to mention how they had a 10 to 12 month layoff or something like that when Spence lost to Crawford or when Jamel Charlo lost to Canelo, all this other stuff. Let's see if they mention that Tyson Fury had a 10-month layoff. I think that some will and probably some won't. But besides the point, I do think overall that Tyson Fury, that the 10-month layoff or the 11th month layoff, I do think that it had a little bit of a factor. Tyson Fury, and he's usually in great condition. Of course, he always looks a little bit flabby and marshmallowy, I understand. But Tyson Fury is always usually in great condition. I very rarely see him tire out throughout a fight. I very rarely see him breathing heavily throughout a fight. But even in the second half of this fight, he was breathing relatively heavily. And I think that Tyson Fury, that I'm not going to say that he didn't train for this fight, but I do believe that he probably did not take Francis Ngannou as seriously as what, he probably didn't think that he was going to bring that to the table. And I will also state this, some of the flaws overall that Tyson Fury does have were somewhat exposed in this fight. There were certain flaws, and Timothy Bradley did mention them. One of the things that he actually said on the upcoming fight, and I have to give Timothy Bradley a lot of credit for this, at times Fury, he does not move laterally enough. He can move laterally, and at times he will move laterally, but a lot of the times, because he can rely on his height and reach, he pretty much moves straight back and forth a lot of the time, sometimes not moving enough to the lateral side. He was able to get away with that a little bit more against Deontay Wilder because Deontay Wilder is a very straight back and forth fighter when it comes down to it. He's not a guy that really uses great lateral movement, and he's also a very one-dimensional fighter. But, in this fight, in Francis Ngannou, I'm not going to say that he looked like he was an A-grade level boxer in here necessarily, but I think that Francis was much better than once anticipated. And let me also give Francis Ngannou this amount of credit. Because in my fight prediction video, I said, was the stamina going to be able to hold up for Francis Ngannou? Was the power really going to be as powerful as what it had been in MMA, as what it will be in boxing? Because a lot of the times MMA fighters, they get in the ring with that of boxers and they figure out that it's a complete new world level of power, at least in terms of that of hand-to-hand combat. So I have to give Francis Ngannou a lot of credit. That dude is just a genetic animal. He's a genetic freak, no doubt about it. He just must have very, very strong punches. Now, that being said, the knockdown that was landed on Tyson Fury, I don't think that it necessarily was a blow that was close to knocking Tyson Fury out. I think it was a little bit more of a balance shot, because Tyson Fury, he kind of went back and, well, maybe not even a balance shot, but he kind of threw his punches, went on the inside, got a little bit too close. As Ngannou was the shorter man and probably the man with the shorter reach, he got a little bit too close and kept both of his hands down. Ngannou landed a good left hook, I believe, on Fury's temple or wherever it landed, and it knocked Tyson Fury on his ass. So Tyson Fury, at times, he does have a little bit of a problem being a little bit too careless in some of his fights. Of course, because he's an extremely gifted boxer and an extremely gifted fighter, a lot of the times he is able to get away with it. But in this fight, Ngannou certainly gained his respect. And, I'm sure Ngannou that, he's a little bit sad or a little bit upset that he did not end up winning this fight. But you know what? At the end of the day, because that's how competitors are, because even the contests that a lot of people believe they're not supposed to win, they always believe they're supposed to win, especially if it's very close, because in their mind, they can do anything that they want to achieve. However, Francis Ngannou, of course, is not really a guy that was trained in boxing all of his life, at least not like Fury. So I have to give him a lot of credit here. He stood right there with Tyson Fury. And I got to say, had this been a 12-round fight, I'm not really sure where this fight would have gone. Because Tyson Fury, he he clearly was a little bit out of gas. And, the first two rounds, I'm pretty sure I gave to Tyson Fury. The third round, of course, went to Francis Ngannou. And then I think 4, 5, and 6 I gave to that of, or excuse me, that's of 4, 5, and 6 I gave to that of Tyson Fury. And then round 7 I gave to Francis Ngannou. Round 8 was Fury's round at the beginning, the first half of it. But then for whatever reason, I don't know what happened, but Ngannou all of a sudden just started teeing off on Tyson Fury, and Fury was just standing right in front of him. I mean, I don't even know what happened. I don't know if he got hurt. I don't know if he was trying to prove a point, if he was trying to conserve stamina by trying to tie Ngannou up, and he was just a little bit hurt and tired. I don't really know what that was. Maybe he was just showing Ngannou that you're not going to knock me down again. I don't really know what that was. But round 8 was really turning out to be Fury's best round, and then it turned out to be his worst round. Other than that, of course, of the knockdown in round 3, because he was absolutely horrendous. And then I gave him round 9, clearly. And then round 10, some people might give to Fury. I personally gave it to Ngannou. He was pushing the action, and I don't really think either man landed that significant of a punch. But I thought that I thought that Ngannou was a little bit more active, and I thought that he was trying to win the fight a little bit more. So once again, that led to my 95-94 scorecard. But it is what it is. But that being said, what are some of the flaws that Tyson Fury ended up showing in this fight? Once again, the straight back and forth line movement, as Timothy Bradley pointed out earlier in the week, it did come to the occasion. And Fury, eventually he did start to move more laterally. And once he figured out that Ngannou's punches were for real, and that, he actually was a little bit better than what he expected, he said, oh shit, I'm actually going to have to move on this guy. And Fury from round 1, I think, tried to scare Francis Ngannou. He tried to go in there and he tried to hit him with a right immediately. And he did hit him with a right, but Francis Ngannou landed a punch immediately in that first 5 seconds. And it must have, caught Fury's attention because as soon as that happened, the smile off of Fury's face pretty much collapsed, and he said, "Oh shit, this dude can actually really punch." And I think that Fury kind of fell into that trap of thinking that Ngannou was not going to be the real deal, and I also thought that the power was not going to be quite as impressive as what it would be for MMA in terms of that of a boxing match. But Ngannou clearly is just one of those many gifted punchers. He is clearly one of the strongest punchers on earth, no doubt about it. But even for a boxer, he showed that his power was A grade level. I would also love to see a match between Francis Ngannou and Deontay Wilder just to see if Deontay Wilder would take that fight. It would be very particularly interesting. But once again, some of the flaws that Tyson Fury showed, which has been a little bit of a problem with him in the past, the straight back and forth line movement, he's been able to fix a little bit. But also another, kind of vice of his, or, kind of a little bit of another fault, is that at times when he's moving in and out or even staying in the range, sometimes he will keep his hands down a little bit. And I think that he thought that Ngannou, that he was just going to be another Deontay Wilder, or even easier than Deontay Wilder, and that he could afford to keep his hands down. Turned out he was wrong. So, at the end of the day, Tyson Fury, he certainly got surprised in this fight, and Ngannou was able to get to that of a decision. I have to give him a great amount of credit. He did a great job nullifying some of Fury's weapons, even nullifying his jab to a degree. He was parrying it very well. He was countering when Fury was on the inside, and he had Fury very afraid, very tentative at times to throw his lead hand jab, very tentative to throw a right hand. Fury, of course, in my view, just did enough to win the fight, but it was by the hair of his chin. It was by the skin of his teeth. So, once again, very great job by that of Francis Ngannou. And Fury, I'm going to attribute this a little bit to that of ring rust, but he did show some of the two faults that he does have. Sometimes moving in straight and back and forth lines a little bit too much, which can make you easier to hit because you're more predictable with that of your movement. And on top of that, when it comes down to it, sometimes keeping his hands down for a little bit too long, because at times he does rely a lot on his height and reach, a lot like Deontay Wilder. But Fury, of course, is much more defensively responsible than that of Deontay Wilder when he needs to be. So Fury, is still a great boxer, but he certainly he certainly could have been sharper in this fight, no doubt about it. And some of the faults, that were in Tyson Fury's game, Francis Ngannou and more than likely Mike Tyson, they showed Francis Ngannou possibly what he could capitalize on. So I have to give Francis Ngannou, Mike Tyson, all those guys a lot of credit, depending on the amount of time that, or what they all put into it. I give them a great amount of credit, no doubt about it. So very good on Francis Ngannou. Of course, he ended up losing the fight, but of course that was expected. Tyson Fury, of course, did not look good at all for his regular standards in this fight. I think it was a little bit because of Ngannou. I also think it was a little bit because he probably was a bit rusty. And on top of that, he probably was not taking him as seriously as what he once probably should have. I think that once he got into the fight with Ngannou, that he realized that he was going to have to take him a little bit seriously. But I don't think that really kicked in until really about probably, round 3, where Ngannou really knocked him down. Then Fury was like, oh shit, I'm I'm really gonna have to take this guy relatively seriously. Like, this guy, not only is he powerful, but he's parrying. It's hard to get in on him. It's not just easy. And every time I throw my right hand, he's preparing for an incoming punch. That being said, I also think that Fury could have threw a little bit more feints at times. I think that he could have threw a little bit more fakes and not just feints. With that of his right hand. I think that if he would have threw, the right hand somewhat down the pipe or pretended like he was going to, Ngannou more than likely would have threw his counter over the top, and then Fury could have possibly moved out of range and then hit it straight down the pipe, or just waited and kind of avoided that, and hit it straight down the pipe. I also think Fury could have done more work on the inside against Ngannou. That being said, I'm talking about tying him up and kind of doing like what he did to Deontay Wilder when it came down to it. And on top of that, I also thought he could have used his lead hand a little bit better. His jab was very decent in the fight, but Tyson Fury also a lot of the times will use his lead hand as a defense mechanism, which he did to a degree, but a lot of the times he'll also use it to set up a trap. And I think that he could have done that more, because I don't know what Ngannou's reach is, but he clearly is shorter than that of Tyson Fury. And I think all in all, once again, that he could have benefited from possibly improving in some of those areas. But Tyson Fury, when it comes down to it, he still did enough to win. He barely won, but he did just enough to win. Now, is there going to be a rematch between these two? We'll see what happens. I would not mind seeing a rematch between these two. Would I favor Ngannou to win the rematch? No, I wouldn't. I think that Fury would probably become more prepared for the fight and take him more seriously, and more than likely, probably either stop Ngannou in the rematch or at the very least win a little bit more decisively, when it came down to it. So that's more than likely what I would predict. The fight that I would really love to see personally is a fight between Francis Ngannou and Deontay Wilder to truly settle who is right now the hardest puncher on the planet Earth. I would love to see a fight like that. That would be very particularly interesting. I would love to see that. But I would love to see some of those fights. Francis Ngannou, he certainly does not have bad talent for a boxer. And let me tell you this, because a lot of guys, when they see MMA fighters, they say, "Oh, had he trained in boxing, he could have became a world champion in boxing," and that's potentially so. Let me tell you what, this is the greatest performance, hands down, that an MMA fighter or a UFC fighter has ever had against that of a boxer. Hands down, it's not even close. At least over from what I've particularly seen. Of course, I'm talking about in that of a boxing fight. So once again, very, very interesting performance. Very good job by that of Francis Ngannou that he was actually able to capitalize on some of Fury's weaknesses and a little bit of his ring rust in my view. But still, Fury probably should have been more dominant in this fight. But I think that Francis Ngannou was just a little bit better than what Fury anticipated. I think that the power also was for real, and me and Fury were a little bit surprised by that. Of course, I expected him to punch hard, but I did not think that his punches were going to be that level of impactful. But we'll see. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for this video. I thought that the fight was very particularly interesting. Very great fight. And Francis Ngannou has a lot to be proud of, no doubt about it. He's a man that pretty much develops himself from very early on. At one point in time in Cameroon, I believe worked in the mines, for a very, very long time. I believe even at one point in time was homeless. He eventually became a UFC fighter. Of course, he was dominated against Stipe Miocic, or Miocic, however you pronounce his name, in his first heavyweight title fight appearance. Had to come back, lost a Derek Lewis fight because he was so tentative and afraid overall to throw certain punches. And MMA fighters, for a lot of the times, they just usually come back a little bit better, than what a lot of boxers do. Because once you kind of lose your zero in boxing, a lot of your hype or a lot of your stock really can get declined, especially ever since the Floyd Mayweather Jr. era. Because a lot of people, you're pretty much only as good as the last great when it comes down to it. But when it comes down to, or they take a look at a lot of the package or the baggage that former great said, and they always try to compare you to that. Just like LeBron James has had a lot of comparisons to that of Michael Jordan. But when it comes down to it, all in all, very great job by that of Francis Ngannou. Of course, later on, he was able to come back even after those two losses and become a UFC heavyweight champion, destroying Stipe Miocic in that of the rematch. And he was able to later on pretty much become his own boss by leaving that of Dana White, who, of course, usually majorly underpays his UFC level fighters. And he was able to almost beat that of the greatest heavyweight boxer probably of the past 10 to 15 years. So you know what? Hats off to Mr. Francis Ngannou. You have to admire what he's done, not just within his career, but within his life. He's a self-defined man when it comes down to it. And, he believes that personally nothing is impossible. So I have to give Francis Ngannou a lot of credit there. Certainly a lot of admiration. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. Very interesting. We'll see where Tyson Fury goes. I heard that there was a rumor that he potentially could fight Usyk in December. Do I think that that's going to happen after this fight? Absolutely not. I would be heavily shocked because Fury was in a much more competitive fight than what he once thought. So we'll see. As for Ngannou, where do I see him going next? Once again, I would love to see the Deontay Wilder fight, possibly the AJ fight. I don't see those fights happening, but I would like to see them, to see if either one of those two boxers would take the fight with Francis Ngannou. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see where this goes. But great fight. Certainly, hands down, once again, the greatest performance against a boxer that an MMA fighter has ever had. Not even particularly close. Not even close. So great job. But anyways, that's about it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.